CARICOM warns peace will continue to be elusive in Venezuela without dialogue. And in sports, Shea Hope blames tough conditions for Windies' failure to set a competitive total in the second match of the Tri-Nations series. I'm Ricardo Robertson. This is Caribbean in 10 for Wednesday, May 8th, 2019. I'll be back with the details after the break. CARICOM Chairman Dr. Timothy Harris says peace will continue to elude the politically divided Venezuela until the contending parties are encouraged to sit down to reach agreement. And he said significant groups cannot be excluded from any peaceful process to resolve the crisis. Harris issued the caution at the third ministerial meeting of the International Contact Group on Venezuela in Costa Rica yesterday as he reiterated CARICOM's position of non-intervention and respect for constitutional order and democracy. The International Contact Group is comprised of countries from the European Union and Latin America. At the Security Summit in Trinidad last weekend, CARICOM leaders vowed to continue diplomatic efforts to help find a peaceful and lasting resolution to the ongoing political crisis in Caracas, where opposition forces are seeking to overthrow the government of President Nicolas Maduro. At least 3 people have been killed and several others injured in clashes between opposition and government supporters in the last week, since opposition leader Juan Guaido called on the military to support the efforts to remove Maduro from power. But the army appears to be remaining loyal to Maduro, and during the clashes amid rival demonstrations, they fired tear gas and water cannons to disperse the crowds. Harris said CARICOM wants to aid in an expedited way as last week's events have indicated that they need to move quickly. The Jamaica Parliament has approved a 90-day extension of the state of emergency in the western parishes of Hanover, St. James and Westmoreland. Last night, the House of Representatives approved the measure by a 44-1 margin, with former National Security Minister Peter Bunton being the only one to vote against the measure. The other 18 members of Parliament were absent when the vote was taken following a lengthy debate. Opposition leader Dr. Peter Phillips told Parliament that his People's National Party would not block the extension, as he stressed that the situation had to be brought under control for the sake of law-abiding Jamaicans. But he sent a warning to the government that there would be no repeat of last year. Back in 2018, several extensions were granted for the state of emergency in St. James, which was first declared in January. However, that state of emergency came to an end in January this year when the opposition refused to support any further extensions. Prime Minister Andrew Holness says discontinuing the original SOE had sent the wrong signal to criminals. Belizeans have started casting their ballots in a referendum on whether the country should take its decades-old border dispute with Guatemala to the International Court of Justice. Polls opened at 7 a.m. at 344 polling stations across the country. 148,500 voters are eligible to cast their ballots up until 6 p.m. when the polls close, and the Electoral Office is expecting final results by midnight or early Thursday morning. The question electors are answering yes or no to is, do you agree that any legal claim of Guatemala against Belize related to land and insular territories, and to any maritime areas pertaining to these territories should be submitted to the International Court of Justice for final settlement, and that it be determined finally the boundaries, finally the boundaries or the respective territories and areas of the parties, end quote. Now, Chief Elections Officer Josephine Tamai has encouraged Belizeans to go out and vote.
Your duty and your obligation to go out and make your statement. Staying at home on that day will not do any good for any individual, because those are the same individuals who I believe will sit and complain, but the only way your voice could be heard is if you go out on that day and cast your ballots.
And Prime Minister Dean Barrow and opposition leader John Briceño have voted or urged voters to support their causes, with the government urging a yes vote and the opposition a no vote. And in a last-minute appeal to voters, Barrow said that the referendum is a national issue which should never divide citizens along party lines. The referendum is being observed by teams from the Commonwealth and CARICOM, as well as the British, US and Taiwan embassies. And the Belize Chamber of Commerce and Industry and the Belize Network of NGOs has also deployed 72 monitors at polling and counting stations across the country to help ensure a smooth voting process. And stay with us, your Midday Sport is next.
Coming up, Central America with a Caribbean twist. Welcome to Belize. It's a tasty tour with some satisfying stops in Barbados. The excitement of Caribbean Week New York with touches of art and music. It's all next, right here on Caribbean Passport on this station.
Century maker Shea Hope says tough conditions at Castle Avenue made it difficult for West Indies to set up a competitive total against Bangladesh yesterday. The low-ranked Asian side crushed the West Indies by 8 wickets, despite Hope's second straight ODI ton. Hope, who also reached a personal milestone of 4,000 ODI runs, also credited the Bangladeshi bowlers for their consistency.
Yes and no. Obviously, I'm pleased with the runs. Just trying to be as consistent as possible. So I'm very happy with those runs. But obviously, we won't be pleased with the loss. So, yes, it wasn't the easiest wicket for stroke players here. The line and length that the Bangladeshi bowlers bowled pretty good. Very straight, I should say. And then at the back end, when the runs started to flow a bit more, I had to pick up the ante, and unfortunately, I got out at that stage, and that's probably why we didn't get as much runs as we could have.
Now, looking ahead to the final 2 matches, Hope said he expects his side to finish on a high.
Obviously, some wins to start, but then we're just trying to add to what we started here, and previously the Caribbean against England. So we're just trying to keep growing as a team and putting up those performances.
And that's Caribbean in 10. Join us again at 6:30 for Caribbean Newsline. Until then, good afternoon.